self-reflection. It is not directly from the book. It is inspired by the book. I hope that in a way can help to understand the contents of the whole book. This is quite a challenging task in relation to self-reflection. Who am I? It's a central, age-old question. I'm attempting here, use a slightly different angle, and also in conjunction with a bit of Chinese mythology, and also in relation to what Lao Tzu was thinking in relation, what is being revealed from the book as inspired. I was inspired by the book. The common saying posits, I'm the body and the soul, or alternatively, I'm the body, the mind, and the spirit. Now, Chinese mythology provides another perspective, suggesting that a human comprises a body, a set of resident spirits, and a set of floating spirits. So as the diagram suggests, one is not directly attached to your body, but floating around. In this context, resident spirits resides in the bone, reflecting your personality, while inspiration comes from the floating spirits. According to Chinese, ancient Chinese belief, illness occurs when the floating spirits are separated from the resident spirits. And at death, the floating spirits returns to heaven, while the resident spirits return to earth. In verse 10 of the book, Lao Tzu implies that floating spirits are the one. What I'm trying to say is, in verse 10, Lao Tzu mentioned the resident spirit, but left out the floating spirits. In the position of floating spirits, Lao Tzu used term one, the Tao, the mother of all beings. So I read this as Lao Tzu thinks, like I was thinking, there is no spirits other than Holy Spirit. So there is only one, that is the Tao, as the spirits that people are speculating. And further, I mentioned many times, the Tao sounds mysterious, but it's actually the awareness, the pure consciousness within us. That is really the floating spirits. Why it's floating? Because it's always there, it's everywhere, it never dies, have no beginning, no ending. So Lao Tzu emphasized you should embrace the two together. So I put a diagram there to speculate that, as enlightened one, who would always, always embrace the two without separation. We always use the Tao, use the awareness, use this floating spirit as the host, as the real host, as the king of the castle. And so in terms of contemporary term, I guess I mentioned here is, in modern terms, the self comprises, composition can be understood as having a body, subconsciousness, and pure consciousness. Now, this is come down to, whenever we're referring to our conscious mind, is really about the two, either subconsciousness or pure consciousness. And we, as an individual, we often operate in either subconsciousness or pure consciousness. Subconsciousness is something we are, when we are engaging our analytical mind, we are engaging our intellect. We are in deep thinking. We are very much on our brain. On the other hand, the pure consciousness or the awareness is always built within us. When a life starts, it actually took the Tao or awareness as its host. That's how the life begins. It begins with that. And that's what I mean by the Tao creates beings. And the life ends by losing the consciousness, which we all know, the matter of fact. So subconsciousness is something not a real consciousness. It's seemingly like a consciousness, but it is really about engaging our intellect, try to use the data we already remembered or we already accumulated, which is our life experience, the data in our memory. They are really reflect the past. We try to use that to address the problem of present. We try to foretell, predict the future. We want to plan for the future because we have no confidence to the hidden awareness that will guide us because it's hidden. We're not aware, even though it's guiding us on a daily basis or almost a minute basis, right? Everything we do, we walk, all the cognitive thing is really reflected awareness. The instinct, the intuition, I regard they are all really coming from awareness. And this awareness is really the host. This awareness is really us. Without this, we cannot comprehend anything. Now, the AI is now become more popular, and whoever uses AI or develop AI, they will more and more will realize what the essence of human being is. Because AI does not have that. AI will surpass anyone where the environment for the solution is fixed. All the rules are known. Only then the AI will surpass us. Why? Because AI has more energies, more resources, more data than any individual. Therefore, in a space, in a subject matter that only related to all the rules that is known can be spelled out, the AI will beat us. So that's in many fields. Playing chess is a very good example because the game of chess, the rules clearly can be defined. Therefore, human will have no hope to beat AI once it's developed. So anyone want to take the playing chess, playing game as their profession, they should think again. Now, any area, including medicine, some parts really will be replaced by AI because if the symptom is known, all the tests that can be done, the AI will produce more comprehensive the solution, the plan. However, AI can really replace human? The answer is never. Why? Because AI doesn't have awareness. We human do. And each individual human have the potential. It's all matter of whether the area that we apply the AI have a clear rule can be defined or not. Right? In many areas, there is very hard to spell out all the rules, including medicine. There are things that AI may not able to pick up, the diagnosis, right? You need that creativity, you need awareness. And also the AI, because it doesn't have the awareness, it does not actually comprehend, understand what it produces. So it can make a very silly mistake. So I'm sort of go away from this the appendix I try to share. So let me continue. So subconscious reflects your traits and the life experiences constitute a significant factor in your personality. Pure consciousness, this paragraph is very much I already mentioned. So I'll come down to using this metaphor, I think we can understand the term the better. Now, the normally people commonly being translated as virtue, the power. This term is probably predated the book. Lao Tzu used this term, borrowed this term. In verse 21, Lao Tzu specifically want to point out the is to follow the Tao. The is something reflect to the Tao. So if Tao is the pure consciousness, the is really the individual's state of consciousness, state of awareness. Or put it simply, it is self-awareness. And if you look at verse 51, you realize it is the that shape each individual. So the reflect your state of conscious mind. That conscious mind sometimes with your subconsciousness, sometimes with a pure consciousness. And in the most critical moments, you are always with the pure consciousness because your pure consciousness will always make you aware. It's just a matter of whether you ignore it or not. When in a critical moment, you will follow your awareness, like extreme pain. When there is an extreme, a smelling, the foul smelling, loud sound, all those things, you will be waked up by your thinking, from your thinking. But in other time, we just ignore our awareness because we are in deep thinking. And people in depression, very likely in that state of constantly thinking. In that mode, they usually exhibit indecisiveness because they cannot be sure the solution provided by their thinking are right. So they always wavering, undecisive. And that moment, they simply forgot their hidden treasure, the Tao, the awareness. Have you ever noticed or had experience when in a critical moment, And suddenly you had awareness. And your reaction to the awareness is, that's right. That's the way to go. You will not have a moment of doubt. And that's when you had that awareness. You had awareness guided you. So my last conclusion here is, when one is dominated by the subconsciousness, the connection is frail, resulting in a deluded state. This size of the disconnection gap between your personality and the pure consciousness, or subconsciousness and pure consciousness, is really determine the degree of delusion. And regardless of gap, pure consciousness persists in every being, because without the pure consciousness, it means you're dead. You lost consciousness. So the key to reducing or eliminating the gap lies in being present, which means be mindful, engaging non-doing, wu wei. So the wu wei and the mindfulness, they are really synonym. It's all talking about being present. Minimize your engagement with the intellect. If you do, just remember to come back. Always be guided by your awareness, because that awareness is the king of your castle. The similar line from Bible. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Peigee. This is amazing. Thank you. If you could just stop sharing the screen. Would love to hear people's, because I want to give a chance for people to ask you questions. And this is just, very profound. Thank you so much. So folks, go ahead and type an exclamation mark if you'd like to ask any questions or make any short comments. I want to get different people engaging with what Peigee said. All right, Quan, go ahead.
First, Peigee, once again, I know that I repeat that often, but what you say is absolutely outstanding and awesome. That being said, I just want to have a hint. It doesn't have to be now; it can be much later. But there is an excellent book from the Chinese classical tradition named "The Classic of the Yellow Court," that it would be absolutely awesome to read one day. I just want to say that, because it is one of the source, or even the source of the metaphor that Peigee used, the king of the castle or the master of the castle. And the distinction is just perfect. Okay, the diamond is precisely what you say. It's Hun, okay, the floating spirit, and that floating spirit. Or maybe we should not. I don't know. Should we remove the S as spirit, because that floating spirit is truly universal and is one for everyone, right? So maybe it's a small detail. I may be a little bit too picky, but I think we should remove the S. And the other paw for individuality, the resident spirit, absolutely, and ghost. I would say that I would add Gui, okay, and I explain why. Because and for the people who don't know Chinese, if you look at floating spirit and resident spirit, you see that the character at the right is the same for the two. Okay, only the radical at the left is different. Gui is the stuff at the right, how to write it. Because in psychodynamics there is three ascending concepts, which is very close to Gui, Po and Hon, meaning the ghost, the resident spirit, and floating spirit, the one. And that is precisely the personality, the individuality, and pure consciousness. The personality precisely are the different layers of mask of memory that we accumulated from the voices of others. Okay, since the word persona, because sona is sound, and that persona in ancient times was the kind of big mask that the Greek and the Roman comedians were putting on their face, because around the mouth you have a kind of funnel, which is a kind of primitive micro to expand their voice, okay, to amplify their voice. So that personality is precisely the layers of voices from the others, okay, the influences that we got in our childhood, in our young age, that are the ghosts, the koi, okay, that would be there and that would be dominating us if we don't have the courage, the valor to do our things. Okay, I like very much that expression from New York, do your things. And when you do your things, it is then precisely that you will let the development of the poor, of the individualities. Okay, and I agree with you, Peigee, that the resident spirits should have an S, because we can have many interests and many foci of enthusiasm that would help us build our individuality. But I would make the hypothesis that most of the time, the major foci of enthusiasm is probably at the most between 3 and 5. Okay, it's very rare that someone would have more than 5 foci of big interest that would direct his life. And finally, the level of pure consciousness would correspond to Hon, meaning being, pure awareness, etc. So once again, old wisdom and new science are embracing each other with the development of science to a broader perspective. And here I'm a little bit biased. I often see the science of the 19th century as a little bit low key or low quality science, a little bit imprisoned in the intellect. And the science of the 20th century, of the 21st century, is beginning to liberate itself from the prison of the intellect and to give the hands to the old sages. I stop here.
Wonderful.
Just
Great.
a quick response.
Please take your time to respond. Go ahead.
The reason I put the plural form for the Huan and the Po, simply because that is reflected in the Chinese mythology. In many books mentioned about there are 3 floating spirits and 7 resident spirits. I'm using that, but I think they are really illusory. It's not reflect the real. Like I mentioned in the appendix, there is only one.
But Peigee, sorry, I interrupt you. I think maybe that the old Chinese sages were not so dumb. 3 in 1 and 1 in 3. I think it's that. You know, beauty is not complete without goodness and truth is not complete without beauty and goodness, and etc. You know, maybe that 3 means that, but that's my hypothesis. That's all.
Well, as I said, I'm not endorsing this mythology, and neither Lao Tzu was advocating this at all. He simply didn't mention the Huan at all. He just put that replace that with the one. Really, the one is enough. We are all one. Now, I think the concept of a ghost is really a matter of either can consider is illusion, or simply the expression of something that is beyond the metaphysics. So it's up to individual how you want to express, but it really means nothing to anyone else, because
absolutely
it cannot be described. as soon as you describe in the language, it's already incomplete, inaccurate. This including the concept of a reincarnation.
Can you
That's
expand
my
on that?
personal view. Yeah.
Can you expand on
this
that?
is my personal view. Lao Tzu didn't mention this. I tell you, now, if you understand, accept, in essence, we are the Tao, we are the pure consciousness, then everything is resolved. You, Guan, is my incarnation, reincarnation. Everyone is my incarnation, reincarnation, right? Think about it.
Right. Yes. Well, I don't have to think about it because I reached the same conclusion in the sense
And
that
you see, the Tibetan Lama, Dalai Lama,
yeah,
when he's seeking someone as a reincarnation, right? People may be skeptical. I was skeptical, but now I realized it makes sense. It makes sense in a sense that if I'm the Dalai Lama, if I'm truly enlightened, realized, I will have no concern whether the wrong person will be picked up as a reincarnation, because everyone is the right one.
Yeah, sure. Everyone is the right one for the floating one. Absolutely. But according
so
to
I
the
will stop here. Yeah.
But I just want to take 10 seconds. According to the mythology, as you say, if you absolutely identify with the floating one, you will never go down to the 10,000 things again. You know that.
Thank you. Thank you, Quan. And thank you, Peigee. This is wonderful conversation. Next up is Paul. Paul.
Wow, that was an amazing dialogue. That was worth the night just there. So thank you guys. And actually, I was vastly disappointed when Quan said he was going to take the plural away, and Peigee agreed, because that is what got me most interested in your presentation. And you just explained why, and it relates to I wasn't at all thinking of all the Trinity things Srikant has talked about, but now I am. But I mean that it's if you're working on some sort of path, just thinking about the one, there's something that's a bit impossible to work with there. So there's these aspects of three that are really all the one, but it's somehow, as you're working toward it, useful to think of them. And that's what I saw here, because just having this one spirit that is true, it might be totally true, it's the one and the Dalai Lama and all that. But when you're just trying to sort of pull it into your consciousness, your awareness, I'll say, to think of it as the floating spirits, I find hugely helpful, because then you can distinguish where you have trouble with it and where you don't, things like that, because each has a different face, So that's my comment.
Peigee, would you like to comment?
I have a quick response. This is amazing. What you are saying is really reflect each of us have the desire to categorize, to divide, to differentiate, rather than seeing everything is a one, which is absolute, which is correct. We have a desire to want to know details. That's how what the I Ching is. You're looking at the world as a two rather than one. Yin and yang, black, white, and the beautiful and ugly. And then you are still not satisfied. Obviously, two is too few. You want to divide it by four, right? Four quadrants, right? You will analyze. We use a lot about the analyze the personality. You are in this quadrant, in that quadrant, and as soon as we do that, as soon as we depart from one, everything becomes relative. everything become incomplete, and will very much make us to overlook that everything is interconnected, right? If we are thinking about you're either black or white, so we didn't realize they are interchangeable, they are interdependent. Same thing about the 4 and 5 and whatever, right? Now, there is people talking about, ancient Chinese thinking about the universe can be represented by 5 elements. And I was told that that's also derived from the insight that the I Ching has shed the lights on us. Now, we all know the I Ching come up to like 64, the hexagon. The probably Guan knows better than me. You see, when you look at the world can be divided by that many, you suddenly feel, oh, there are lots to play with. You can predict, you can look at different combination, right? That's similarly to many other places, civilization in the world. Our intellect make us realize partial insights of the universe, even though there is vast variety of forms, we realize there is a pattern, right? Through the pattern, we see the math. And by seeing the math, our desire arouses. We want to predict. That's what this is. The human being went down to the path that they emphasize intellect. They want to predict. They want to foretell. Without realizing, everything is already in place, already have all things are interconnected. Because we are overly reliant on the intellect, we realize we don't have the energy, right? And our individual intellect is so limited. What happened? We invent AI. This is the natural path we have to go through because the path we have taken. Without realizing, the awareness is the mother of all AI. Remember I said, AI only works well where the rule is known. So think about it. Awareness is the AI. The awareness know all the rules, right? So why don't you rely on the master AI within you?
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Paul, follow up.
Yeah, love it. That I could take many follow-ups, but I'll really zero in. So do you see it as a path that is very often taken and is a legitimate one because of all these capabilities we have in our proclivities that can lead us down the garden path of the 10,000 things to get to the one through a dissertation on the many, through a presentation of 2, yin and yang, a presentation of 3, the Trinity, for instance, that shows that actually one is each of the other, but it makes the mind go into kind of you can't think of that intellectually when someone says the 3, each of the 3 is actually the one, but it kind of makes your brain able to come closer to the one. So it's a valid path to gain awareness. That's my comment / question. Do you agree?
Yes, I do realize that too. Initially, I always, thinking, if we have enough people like Lao Tzu realize, the everything is a math, the miracle is everywhere. Therefore, we should be practicing non-doing. then we were in a different civilization, different path. But then I realized we human cannot overcome that desire. This the path we have to take before we realize what is the right path. So 3,000 years is short for the humanity. But I do believe one day we had enough lessons, the catastrophic lessons, we will inevitably move to the right path. Otherwise, human as a species will be extincted, I think.
Juan, did you have a comment? And then we'll go to Mark.
Yeah, but I just want to make to be a little bit clownish. That's all. It will take 10
Please.
seconds. When Peigee said that we have a natural AI, I beg to differ a little bit, because if the one is the AI, it's not AI, it's the CI, cosmic intelligence, and not artificial intelligence.
Thank you. Thank you, Juan. Next up is Mark. Mark, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm really enjoying this conversation as well. And thank you, Peigee, for bringing in these mythological elements. And just in terms of resonances with other cultures, there was something that you said that really struck me as reminiscent of the ancient Egyptian pyramid texts, which we don't often get to mention. So this is my one and only chance, this whole year. And that was where I think you said body to earth, soul to heaven, something like that. Peigee, am I right?
Yes, that was a mythology, and really reflect my understanding. If you took Dao as the pure consciousness, that is the spirit, it's always there. It will never perish.
In the pyramid texts from the 5th dynasty, you can read this in places like Budge's edition of the pyramid texts from the early 20th century. You read the following: Ba, dear, pet, Shan, dear, ta. Soul to heaven, body to earth. And in this conglomeration of spirits that you've talked about, it is also paralleled in the sense that the Egyptian concept of the soul is so multi-layered. And according to some accounts, there are 9 different parts of the soul. And certain things like the ka is thought of as the unity of the abstract characteristics, which sounds like the personal spirits that you were talking about. And then the sahu is the spiritual body, of course. The ba is the separable part of the ka. And then the kai beat, the shadow, the ku, intelligence, and even a name which is familiar from the ancient Chinese but has a different meaning. Ren is the name. So this multi-layered, multiplicity maybe is another way to think of this conglomeration of the human being. And that's what I was thinking of, was the connection there.
Thank you, Mark. We lost our host. Anyone wish to question?
And I guess, I'll I'll just mention another question about the handout that you showed at the beginning. And this idea of, I'm looking at the handout right now. You said the following reflects an enlightened one from others' perspectives, as the enlightened one perceives no self. And I guess that just struck me as sounding very Buddhist. And I think if Jason were here, he might question how far we want to tread into Buddhism and interpreting the Dao De Jing.
Can I interrupt here?
Go ahead. Go
Yes.
ahead.
The actually the one I quoted is directly from Dao De Jing. It's been mentioned twice. In verse 16, not of 16, verse 22, the Lao Tzu mentioned, perceiving no self is enlightenment. So enlightened person would not perceive self. It's been mentioned twice in a positive and negative way. In verse, I think it was 43, or not 43, either 24 or maybe 24, 22 and 24. The other verse mentioned about when you see yourself, when you perceive yourself, you are not enlightened. So this is not a Buddhist concept alone. Seeing no self is being mentioned in this book. And as I said, it can be easily understood. Once you realize we are the pure consciousness, which is a universal, which is everywhere. So that self is not really individual self.
Thank you. Thank you, Peigee. I had a question and a comment. I really liked your description of body, the subconsciousness, and consciousness. And I was looking at the subconsciousness and its features and how it is different from consciousness. Because subconsciousness is passive. You know, it has a lot of things in it, but it's reactive to things. Whereas awareness is active. You know, it is the active element. And the active element produces things in the subconscious, just like it produces 10,000 things outside. It produces 10,000 things inside in the subconscious, including the words. And if you use those words as just given, I love the architect Louis Sullivan. He calls it, form follows function. So the function is awareness, which is actually generating all these forms, 10,000 forms. And the moment you move to forms and say, that's all there is, or whatever forms you're familiar with, or whatever is there in your subconscious, whatever is there in your memory, then you have given up the function. And it's actually going to stop you from exercising your function, unless you kind of go back. Does that jive with what you're saying?
Yes. In fact, yes, in relation to subconsciousness and pure consciousness, subconsciousness uses our memory, uses the data in our memory. And where the data is coming from? It's coming from our pure consciousness.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is David.
By the way, I just quickly also mentioned that
Sure.
if you use the metaphor about the human being as a computer, the awareness, the floating spirit, it's like a operating system program. The operating system.
Mm-hmm.
That is the program. That is the AI. That is the master, the mother of all AI. When I say this, is because it contains all the rules. It contains all the data. So the awareness, unlike a subconsciousness itself, have distinct data and analyzer. Analyzer is your intellect. And the data is what you have experienced, have been made aware, that is stored in your memory, right? And beyond this, awareness is self-contained program and the data. It contains everything. It knows everything, right? It's the source of everything.
Thank you. Thank you, Peigee. Next up is David.
Yeah, Shrikant, I want you to put this in your model because I think you have to fit it in somewhere, which is consciousness versus subconsciousness. And I agree, subconsciousness, I think of it, if we're going to use the word, we ought to think of something passive, not the active mind, which I'm not aware of. I'm talking about subconsciousness, like we can go there and find things. We have memory, impressions, you know, prior feeling, sense, all of those things. And also awarenesses of my body that I can turn to. But consciousness, I think, has both a passive and active aspect to it. Because when you open, so you're making the reception, which is sort of passive, right? Consciousness participates in that way. The second thing is that it's active because when you act and will and imagine and choose, you prepare, and that's active. And that's so consciousness has those two sides. It's not, I don't think it's just this passive is subconscious and the active is conscious. I think consciousness itself contains a sphere of activities. That's all.
That's a very good point. I mean, I do. I think the consciousness has, again, you know, going back to Louis Sullivan, you know, he thinks, you know, the function is breathing in and breathing out. You know, you're taking in the world, and that's an active process. You know, you are saying yes. The passive would be if you're just reacting to what is already there in your head, without, like, to be truly open to things is an act of tremendous activity. You're simply basically saying yes to the world. Think of it, the best thing, I always think of this in terms of persons, because like if you want to really listen to a person, okay, you kind of have to, if you want to be aware of the other person, you kind of have to let that other person speak to you, keep whatever you have aside for a moment, and give that. And it's an act of a tremendous amount of awareness. And there is activity involved that in just receptive. So it's not, you're not acting. So both those parts of this conscious activity, the reactivity, I mean, by reactivity, I mean that you just see the other person, you have a certain kind of impression, and you just, you know, that impression
Right.
that you have, right? The impression that you have is just something that your automatic process produced. And then you're just reacting, you're taking an action based on that. So both processes involve kind of taking in and taking out. But, so breathing in and breathing out. But in case of awareness, it's fresh. You know, it's, you're actually saying, what is it? And you are trying to create something new, which is appropriate for the context. Not just, whereas when you're operating in a completely reactive way, what you take in is actually just what you had already. You're really not taking in, you're just figuring out what it suggests. And then you're just, even you're acting, but you're acting in a form. Does that make sense to you?
I really like that you described it with the word new, the newness of it, because you don't know what it's about to unfold. So allowing that, and that's nameless, boy, does that sound familiar. Yeah, really being in that for awareness to be new. That's a great word. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Great point.
A quick feedback from me in relation to David's comments. I know it's a big topics, but just quickly, if you take that awareness as a passive, then I would say you are separating the awareness. You did. I mean, awareness is really yourself, and when you took that passively, that means you are not with the awareness, and being is about being is really about being the awareness yourself.
It's an interesting distinction in language, that what I'm calling passive, you're actually pointing out how it's affecting you, and that's sort of an active thing. And so it's very interesting. Thanks for that complexity.
Thank you. Folks, I mean, the thing is that this is actually very difficult things to talk about. And most of us are using words which are slightly different, you know? And many times, like what Peigee is referring to by intellect, I see it as being kind of subconscious, reactive part, whereas in some context, when intellect is used, is seen as an active part. So it's like, I mean, it's important not to get hung up on these words, because what we're trying to do is that we're trying to get through the words of saying, okay, what is being said about reality, about human experience, about who we are, about what the world is. Thank you. Next up is Quan.
Okay. I would like to precisely be a little bit picky and come back to the words, okay? Because once again, my obsession is that the intellect cannot go to the ultimate, but the intellect can go to the event horizon. And the event horizon is very close to being. What I mean is that when you use the word, the Chinese word, the po, on the left, you have the radical for pai, which is white, but white also means clear. Okay, it's also mean clear. So if we accept the division in three of the hexagram, line 1 and 2 meaning earth or Kuei, the personality, and line 2 is the intellect, I would like to suggest that we can call that the subconscious precisely, where the intellect is, and as you said very clearly, Srikan, is the level when we accumulate the past memories and the automatic reaction to this and that as perceived from the environment. Okay, so there is no we can never say that a human being is completely unconscious, so that's why I use the word subconscious. Okay, and the lines 3 and 4, which correspond to man in the hexagram, where there is more consciousness precisely, that I call individuality of consciousness, and precisely where you have that Chinese word po with the radical white or clear, meaning that there is a certain dawning of the clarity of consciousness that I would call consciousness. And the last two lines, heaven 5 and 6, I would suggest to introduce, and I know it might be a little bit clumsy because when we speak about those things, we need to use words. Okay, so it's a proposition. I would call it super consciousness. Okay, so subconscious consciousness as an individual level, and super consciousness with the Chinese word hun, and the radical for hun is cloud. But cloud in classical Chinese, yun, also means to say something, to say. Okay, and here we go back precisely to the idea of logos. Okay, it's from there that you are truly active and dynamic, because you are in the say of logos. And here I think that the Chinese radical are absolutely clear, and I gave an interpretation, but I dare say that that interpretation is not a spinning of the imagination, because the radical yun in classical Chinese truly means say, and the pai truly means white nowadays, but it also means clarity. And here I know it's once again an intellectual trick, but the consciousness is the consciousness of the self with a small s, okay, meaning do your things, okay, you do your things at a personal level. And the super consciousness is not the self of do your things, it's the universal self, the self of the logos. Once again, it's intellectual categories, but if it can help, so much better. I stop here.
Thank you, Quan. Great observations. And I certainly, love words, but I think you can love words as long as you know that you're using the words in order to grasp something which is infinite. And then you're actually very eager to give up the words that you're used to using in order to find better words. So it is this progress towards. So it is a way of actually singing. It's like in Indian tradition, it is called singing to God. You're singing to God. So it's your expressions, it's your expressions you're speaking. Even whatever we are doing here is speaking or
Absolutely.
writing. You're expressing yourself and you do the best you can. And you keep making it better and better and better, never losing the context that what we're trying to grasp is something which is singular and it is holistic and it covers everything.
Yeah.
Right.
The journey to the event horizon. I stopped here.
Very well put. All right, Peigee, we are coming to the last 5 minutes. Any concluding remarks? What did you think so far of? I thought this was fantastic. Okay, I'm really grateful. And I'm really impressed with all the questions and comments from everybody. Just great stuff. Any closing remarks?
Thanks for the opportunity to share my thoughts. And I know that Dao De Jing is very hard to understand, simply because it cannot be understood by our intellect. So something you have to resonate with your awareness. And I stress, you should have a faith that not is based on others, saying, or even the doctrine like Dao De Jing. You really have to have that resonation. Has to be resonated with your awareness, not the doctrine. And besides, the language itself is naturally dualistic, and it could be missing something. So read it in conjunction with the totality. And I would encourage you to read my translation as a beginner, with the beginner's mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Peigee, can you do one more favor? Can you put your translation in the chat for those people who did not get it last time?
I will do, yeah.
Folks, so here is the translation. Peigee is about to put it. You can go ahead and read it. The appendix that he referred to, you can go ahead and read it at your convenience, because he actually covered a lot of ground there. It is summary of a lot. And folks, thank you so much. No matter how much time I spend on Dao De Jing by myself, every time I come to this meetup, I learn so much more. Not just Jason and Amon, but Peigee and Quan and David and Mark and Paul and everybody, Peter, they just add so much to this conversation, because each comes at it, each of us is trying to commune with the Tao in our own way, in an individual way, as Peigee was suggesting, and we are actually openly sharing that with one another. And that's the best way of making progress. All right, thank you so much. See you soon.
Thanks, Ricardo. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.